Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco. Dish out on the movies. Today we are reviewing episode 7 of Daredevil.
Daredevil.
Called Art for Art's Sake.
Daredevil Born Again, episode 7.
Ow.
So this episode starts off with, in a lot of old sitcoms, they used to do this, what they did at the beginning of this episode, and that is, instead of showing what happened after last episode, you got Kingpin and his people, and they stand around and talk about what happened. They're like, oh, this happened and then that happened. Well, oh, how did that happen? Oh, this happened and that happened and then that happened. That was a very lazy thing to do, and it felt a lot like old sitcoms. That's what they would do, like Leave It to Beaver. For instance, they had an episode where Wally was supposed to dress up like a girl for a play, and eventually he convinced Eddie to do it and made Eddie think that it would be the cool thing to do. And then Eddie did it, and instead of showing that, which was what the whole episode was building to pay it off, they only showed afterwards. And it was at home. Yeah, and it was at home. And all it is just Wally saying, oh, ha ha, it was really funny, ha 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 ha. And it's like, that is so lazy and it's so crappy. And that's something that these old sitcoms would do because they just didn't want to do it or whatever. They didn't have the money, I don't know. But let's just stand around explaining what happens and talking instead of showing.
Which, that's what video is all about.
That's what movies and TV are all about.
I mean, I could understand it with Leave It to Beaver because that was a million years ago and they were,
They did have 39 episodes of Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah,
it wasn't just 9 episodes, but it was 39 for that show. So they did have a little bit more of an excuse. This show, I don't really think there's any excuse. This episode was only 40 minutes.
Okay.
It's another short episode. We should have seen what happened after last episode. We shouldn't have started this off with, okay, so what happened? This is what happened, and then this happened. Well, why did that happen? Oh, because of this and that. It's like, nobody wants that. No, that's not good TV. Right, Safi?
No, it was, this isn't reading. I mean, I read a lot. This is video. And, that's why people do TikToks, and that's why there's YouTube, and because they'll show things and so they could have, very easily shown a couple of things, and they wouldn't have lasted long. Just a couple of shots from last week's episode, and then they show Kingpin's. No,
Safi, this is afterwards.
I know that, but they show his face at the reaction of hearing all about it. They said, well, Daredevil showed up, and then they would have reverted to last week, and they showed him in there fighting the guy and maybe the woman being...
No, but the point is, we didn't get to see after last week. We only got to hear about what happened after. You're talking about stuff we've already seen. There would be no point in showing that. I'm talking about after last week's episode ended. We should have seen the aftermath of that and what happened immediately.
And we didn't.
Instead of, what happened? This is what happened. And then this is what happened. It's like, that's not TV. That's not storytelling. Safi?
Yeah, I agree.
Wake up.
I'm awake. I'm thinking about it now.
Wake
they
up.
show the girl, she's already in the hospital. And she doesn't even look like she's awake because she's been through a lot. She lost a lot of blood.
And another thing about this episode, my overall review of this week's episode is that I didn't like it. And I thought that it felt like a remake of last episode. I mean, it was almost the exact same episode, but with different players and a different outcome and a different setting. In
other words, they could have had a longer last episode.
Yeah.
Which included this, so... Yeah.
Well, it just felt like it followed all the same notes. It ended up in the exact same spots that they ended up last week, which is what we call, when they do that in TV shows, we call it spinning their wheels. Better Call Saul did that a lot. They pretended like they didn't have anything to do. So they spun their wheels and remember at the beginning of season 6 they did that, and people were like, it's okay that they're doing that now because they're going to go somewhere really interesting. And then they never went anywhere interesting, and then the show failed and ended, and nobody cares about it anymore.
That's a shame.
Whoops. This is a positive review of Daredevil.
Well,
not.
I liked what I did during the episode is I heard all kinds of notable quotes, and I just wrote those down. Like the very big thing that stood out at the beginning, it wasn't really when Kingpin, I call him that because he's the mayor, but it's like almost like a pseudo thing. He doesn't want to be mayor. He doesn't like being mayor, and no matter how much quote credit he's taking for everything that somebody else does, he takes credit for it. But you can tell he just doesn't like doing it at all. But the thing he says, he gets really mad because he hears Daredevil showed up, although he wasn't there when the cops came there.
Safi's really jumping ahead.
Well, I know that, but he says this thing called, he's really mad. He says, I had this whole thing going and he messed it up, so to speak. And I had a big group of, quote, blue-collar millionaires. I'm like, what? It's like, what is that called? An oxymoron or I don't know. He's completely, I don't know. Is that a thing? Because I've never heard of the term blue-collar millionaire. That doesn't even make any sense. So,
well, he's talking about season 1, and he's talking about, or season 1, 2, 3, Daredevil screwed up his whole operation and everything, and so, but that's like at the end of the episode. So let's go back to the beginning where,
No, he said this. This was at the beginning. I've got it right at the top of my notes.
It is?
Yeah.
Really?
Because remember, they're telling instead of showing the end of it.
Well, remember, he shows up twice because this episode's the same as last episode, so they both end with Daredevil showing up, and then stuff happens after. So that's probably why I'm confused.
Well, that was amazing, too, but we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
I thought for sure that they were going to catch Daredevil. In fact, I thought that was going to be part of the episode.
Kingpin said he just screwed everything up, and it's all his fault. And that kind of reminds me of in Breaking Bad, after Walter kills Gus, Mike was saying, you screwed it all up. We had a good thing going with Gus. Innocent people getting killed, and Gus being revenge-oriented and being a horrible person, threatening to kill Walter's baby daughter, threatening to kill his whole family. Oh, we had a good thing going, and you messed it up. And it's the same thing here. And but then there's 2 scenes where we see these shitty news side characters that nobody cares about, which are
AIDS.
Well, first off, no, not them. Those people aren't really. I'm talking about. You just have to wait and listen, Safi. I'm talking about, first off, Matt's girlfriend, the therapist. She is a soul sucker. She's a dementor. She is joyless. She is sauceless. She comes in, Matt's taking a shower, she comes in, they have a second of shower sex, and then they cut to they're eating breakfast or something, and she's like, why were you, so what were you doing, so why were you, what are you doing at night, she's basically like complaining, like this is like a 1930s movie where you have like the whiny, nagging wife, the nagging girlfriend character, and she's complaining about like, where are you, what are you doing at nights, like, because he's Daredevil, because he's going out at nights and doing all this stuff secretly.
Well,
and it's like,
it was such a about it. He says, I was doing a business thing, and she immediately counters and says, but you left your briefcase here, so why would you lie about doing that?
Well, it's such a tonal shift, First they're in the shower, having
a close moment.
sex, and then all of a sudden she's like, so what are you doing?
Yeah, she starts grilling him. I was shocked too. I thought, what the hell?
I was like, wow. Her character is really, really not very good. Like, I really don't like her. I want Karen back. Matt needs to be with Karen. So that was really like...
And then she starts shrinking him.
Yeah.
She says, are you back with mentally, thinking about your old law firm with Foggy and Karen? And of course, you know, that's a whole nother thing, the Karen thing and their close relationship. You know, he's not going to speak about that, but...
And Matt does admit that, like, this all feels very different and it doesn't feel real. Because
she gets mad about that.
Because it doesn't feel real. That's what I thought was funny, was it was almost like the actor talking about the season. You know, like, this just does not feel real. Like, he should be with Foggy and Karen, and it should be like the old show. You know, this just doesn't feel like it's actually happening. It feels like it's weird and something different.
But she got offended by how he answered that.
Yeah, she says he's going through a process, which is a therapist thing to say.
Yeah,
like,
which meant when I said she's shrinking.
You're just going through a process right now. And, yeah, that was pretty bizarre. She can't help
herself, you know. That's what she does.
Her character sucks.
And I didn't like any of that.
Then they showed the bald guy at the office, the former cop, whatever he is, and apparently Matt promised him he wouldn't do Daredevil stuff anymore if he wouldn't tell anyone, and so he's really upset that Matt saved this girl and did a good job.
And I didn't understand that either. I guess I should, you know.
And then Matt roasts him, and he says, look, the muse is still out there, so we need to catch him, and you need to help me. And then he's like, no, I'm not going to help you. Fuck you. And then he just walks away.
You'll have to do it all by yourself.
Yeah. So terrible, terrible characters that Daredevil is surrounded by. I don't know why we're supposed to like them at all. I wish Kingpin would just kill them all. Bring back Foggy. Bring back Karen. These characters are failures. So after that... somehow Kingpin finds out who the muse is. Well, it's Adam from Your Honor.
Well, he finds out... Oh, okay. Well, they do an investigation of that crime scene with the young girl. And he left behind, I guess, all of his artwork was there. And so, I mean, they had... And what was interesting, the woman in the previous episode when they had... that Asian, what would you call her, the negotiator or something, that they're trying to get the person to release the people, whatever it was, and she was in on the group, and with the police group, she goes to Daredevil. She goes to Kingpin and reports to him all the investigative details that he wants to know.
And this is where, and the reason why I bring that up is because this is where we get to more telling instead of showing. Because remember how I said that the Muse's story was really rushed and the story structure is poor.
I was not.
Okay, Safi, stop interrupting me. Okay, so it was very rushed and the story structure was poor because it just goes from like he's not brought up at all to all of a sudden they have this whole story about him. It's just so inorganic and doesn't feel like a good show, a good story, and it wasn't built up properly at all. And I said this last episode, because everyone has said that now for this episode. Well, I was saying that last week, and when everyone else was saying, oh, no, it was really good. And, but she goes through, like, his whole origin story with Kingpin, and she starts it off with, how familiar are you with Taekwondo? And it's like, it's such a bizarre way to start things. It's like this weird monologue where she goes through, like, his dad forced him to do Taekwondo and he didn't want to, so now he's a bad guy. And it's like...
he killed his Taekwondo master.
It's so stupid. It's like... we should have seen that story. We could have seen that story through the course of weeks now. We could have seen him and the therapist together, and he could have been talking about his whole story, and then we could have seen flashbacks throughout the whole sessions, all the sessions, and then she could just summarize it, and we would, know, yeah, that's what happened. But instead, it's like, this is how we learn his backstory, is from dialogue, and it's terrible. Why would they do that?
I don't know. I thought they rushed it. I mean, it was boom, bing, bang, boom, and it's over. And I thought they could have developed it more, at least if they would have shown everything you said. Just that would have taken more time and kind of let it flesh out a little bit. Instead, they just had to rush right through it, and there's a lot, too. And I don't know, I really didn't like it. And remember last week, I don't know if you listened to the review, but I thought it was really unbelievable how well the Muse fought Daredevil. I thought it looked very expert, and that's because he knew Taekwondo. And he had been in tournaments and been like a tournament champion. They brought that up too. That's why he was so good at fighting. So he was not like just any serial killer. He was an expert at certain things that other ones usually aren't. So.
And then we see the only session between the therapist and the Muse in the whole season, which is a complete failure in terms of show running and storytelling. And we're led to believe that this is like the millionth session they've had together, and that this was all really built up to in like a meticulous fashion. And it's like, no, this is their first session we've seen. And it's this big climactic scene where she discovers that he's the Muse because his nose bleeds, and he draws a picture with the blood of the Muse. And so it's like, and then he also confesses he's had an obsession with her, which didn't really make sense because that was never brought up before or even hinted at. It was never any kind of plot on the show. It's just like shoehorned in there so that she can become a damsel in distress, which is funny because last episode ended with Hector's daughter getting taken hostage by the Muse, and this episode ends with the therapist getting taken hostage by the Muse. And so Daredevil, he discovers that he is obsessed with her by going back to his lair and feeling one of his paintings, and that's when the primary crooked detective shows up, and Daredevil knocks him out. So now both the cops and Daredevil are at the place where the Muse is holding her hostage, and he's gonna apparently like use her blood to paint his final work and then kill himself or something. And
that's not really clear either.
No.
I never thought he was going to kill himself.
Well, why'd he have the gun?
I don't know. But I never thought that even... and you don't see the gun right away. At least I didn't. You see it, after she starts saying, yelling at him and getting mad. And
he says
he pulls it up or out or wherever it was.
She's the key to everything, so... If she's the key to everything, then and he kills her, then what's going to be left? Like, I don't even think that was in the comics either. Like, I don't, because he was a villain from the comics first, and so I don't know if like he had this therapist that he was obsessed with. I'll have to look it up because like it just felt very convenient and very lazy and very.
Plus the fact how he can see he says. I didn't like doing Taekwondo, and and now I'm an artist, and I've always wanted to be an artist, and now I get to be one. So if he killed himself, he wouldn't get to do it anymore. So that doesn't make sense to me, but whatever. Nothing ever, if it's not your own story that you make, maybe everything is just never going to make sense and how you see it. But I just thought that, but when they found his work, and he had done a few works of her, so, because I don't even know why he would, well, I guess, I don't know, he did all these murals, and I don't know if these paper representations were like, artists will plan things out on paper and then take it to the, and then put it on a canvas or whatever, and, I don't know, I mean, these were like complete, like, small works of portraits. They were portraits, and they were completely done, all colored in and everything, with the blood and the gloss, which on paper I don't even know how that would work.
Well, I also want
to
to mention, I like the actor who plays the Muse, but maybe it's just because of the bad writing, but he really was not a very good villain. Like, the way that he's like, I'm not Sebastian, I'm the Muse. And it's
when
like,
she called him his name.
It's so cringeworthy, honestly. But, like, this is what happens in the comics. I think that this makes a lot more sense. It also would have worked a lot better for the season as making it a cohesive story. In the comics, he does the same thing where he is vandalizing and making these big Kingpin murals. He even makes a Punisher mural. And then he kills police officers who show up to get him, and he uses them to make a mural. And Fisk uses this as, and I'm reading the Wikipedia, he uses this to push his anti-vigilantism task force, blaming Punisher for what happened. Which would fit, because remember earlier on in the show, they had that whole thing with Hector getting killed, the White Tiger getting killed by the Punisher bullet. That has literally not come up so far in the rest of the show. Even though that was should have been a big story. Maybe they'll just bring that up randomly next season. But then Muse fights with this guy named Blind Spot again that I've never heard of before. And he beats the Muse. And Muse gets sad from getting defeated, and he commits suicide.
Oh.
But there's nothing about a therapist that he falls in love with and is obsessed with. And it says that after his death, Muse is sent to hell, where he encounters the rejected soul of an artist, and he decides to influence her from beyond the grave by giving her art advice and continuing his work. So I guess he possesses someone else as a ghost to do his work, and that's pretty weird. It doesn't say anything else, but I thought that connecting that in with the Punisher storyline, why didn't they do that? Because that's been a big thing, or it was a big thing for one episode.
Do you think they couldn't get all the copyright? If
Safi, are you fucking kidding me?
I don't know. For that whole story?
Safi, no.
Well, then
this was their decision.
Yeah, I know. Why? I wonder why, too.
Because they don't know what to do. So, yeah, that, Oh, yeah, he also has superpowers in the comics. Apparently.
The Muse?
Yeah. He has superhuman strength, speed, imperceptibility, and expert combat.
Yeah, he was very good at fighting. Really, really good. And I'm wondering, was that really him? Does the actor know Taekwondo, or was that a stunt person? Which, probably was.
I don't know.
But I would love to know that. Just for fun.
I'm not a Wikipedia guy, like someone who looks up comic book stuff, and is like, oh, I know all about the comics, but I just wanted to know if they had that story in the comics or if it was different. And it turns out that somehow the comics are better written than the show, and they feel more like what the show should be. And so Daredevil shows up and he fights the Muse for a second time.
But not as long.
No.
fight as the one last week.
This is like a 1-minute fight.
It's
and
like a third of it or a fourth of it.
the only cool thing... I did not like the fight. I thought that last episode's fight was fantastic. It felt like a return to form, and it felt like probably one of the cooler Daredevil fights we've ever seen. But this fight was like, wah, wah, wah. Because, except for the one thing, which is Daredevil shoots his grappling hook, and it goes inside of his shoulder, the Muse's shoulder, and he drags him over, the blood squirting out everywhere. I thought that was really cool. You know, Daredevil, he's gotten a lot more brutal.
I never, and he's used that before in fighting the hook. What, something like a grappling hook, or
I don't think so. Not usually.
I don't remember seeing it.
He usually sticks with the sticks. You know, the little the nunchucks.
Okay.
But I thought that was really cool. Other than that, the fight was very edited. Like they cut. It was not very good. And but then the therapist shoots him out of nowhere.
Well, she finds the gun, and she was almost like passed out because she was bleeding out and losing a lot of blood. But she saw the gun, she knew how to use it, and she shot the Muse 3 times.
And then she collapses. Oh yeah, we never got to find out what happened to that guy from last episode. You know, the guy that Kingpin had in prison. What happened with that?
Yeah, well, bye now.
Why didn't they show that even? What's the deal with that? This was only 40 minutes. They could have had 15 more minutes of shit happen.
And I thought, too, what was going to happen was that, remember, both the cops and Daredevil both found out that the psychiatrist, that this woman, his girlfriend, was the Muse's psychiatrist. And they both rushed to, I guess, his apartment. And I thought he was going to get caught. Daredevil was going to get caught. And I was actually shocked when of course they don't show the end. They show him helping her. Because she's dying, because she's been bleeding out. And somehow, they didn't even show it. He helps her to where he can, and they're like almost ready to ram through the apartment, but the cops are. And somehow he manages to, what would you call it? How did they call it?
Escape.
Well, no, but he had to make sure she's okay, like do something, maybe put a tourniquet or something like that. Because they said that this guy, one of the task force tells Kingpin all about what happens when they come to the scene, what they find. He's not there, so they don't encounter each other. And I thought for sure they were going to get him.
It was very cliche, that whole part.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, how many times have we seen that before? You know, like, that's another Spider-Man thing, remember? Where, the Green Goblin, he's over for Thanksgiving dinner at Harry's apartment, and then Spider-Man climbs into Harry's bedroom, and they hear a noise. They go in there to investigate, and then Spider-Man is hiding, and Norman is looking around for him because he had to change his clothes into his regular, and so, and then there's the drop of blood. I think that he almost notices, like, so that's another like Spider-Man thing, I guess, but like, just not very good. And
well, the task force says, well, he was there. He got him. He got the Muse, and Kingpin had a fit. He goes, no, you guys got him. You're the heroes.
I thought
You're
that
the
was
Dark Line protecting this city.
Yeah, I thought that was funny because it's almost like the Kingpin did work with Daredevil, but just in a different way, where it's like, oh well, Daredevil did the work, and then Kingpin just took the credit.
But when I thought, and when all that was said, she took him down because he was still alive, even if he got a grappling hook in his, or whatever
shoulder.
It was, in his shoulder. She shot him 3 times. She shot him dead. So if she hadn't shot him dead, he might have still been alive. and they'd still be fighting, and the cops would have caught Daredevil. I don't know, but she did it. And
they never mentioned that either. I thought that was weird. They never mentioned that, like, she's the one who pulled the trigger. They make it seem like he did it. The Muse did it.
To himself.
Or something. I don't know.
Because they said something about, he said, I think it was some kind of murder-suicide thing. And, really?
Very sloppy.
I didn't think that was right.
Very choppy. Very lazy in terms of story structure and dialogue. So then finally, the last thing is that Vanessa meets up with the bad guy in the Kingpin's new group, new organization, and he's been causing problems. And so she works with him to assassinate her husband, supposedly. And then he shows up at the restaurant that Kingpin is all alone at, and it turns out to be a setup. Because a lot of people said that she did that behind Kingpin's back.
She did.
No, somebody else said that they worked together to do that because he was a problem. And that's what I thought. Because I think it makes a lot more sense because he was a big problem. And, he was saying, like, everything was so much better when you were in charge and not Kingpin.
Yeah, which was interesting.
And so it makes a lot more sense, but it wasn't clear 100%.
No.
But I thought that it would make the most sense that, like, I really wouldn't like it if she and Kingpin weren't together. I really don't want it to be like where...
They work together, or they work together, or they
weren't.
Oh.
It's like this whole thing of, like, they're separate and they go to therapy together. It's like, I'm sick of that shit. Like, these characters aren't meant for each other. They're the perfect comic couple. I mean, in terms of, like, they belong together as characters. And so I'm sick of this whole thing. Like, I really hope it doesn't end up where he kills her, or she kills him, or tries to kill him and he kills her. I really hope it doesn't end up that way.
Well, I don't know how it could, because Daredevil's going to have to be involved somehow.
Yeah.
And I don't know how would work either. This is another problem I have with the whole thing. I mean, I kind of liked the episode, but the thing is, since they since they went through this Muse, what would you call it, part so quickly, what's left? What's the end game? How many more episodes?
2.
So what will be the end game? He's gone now. There's no other
Punisher.
Villain. Punisher, but he was so... It seemed like he was staying out of the light.
But they could do the story where they blame him for murders or something. I guess they could finally bring that back again because, again, the story structure of this season is abysmal.
They could have stretched this thing out with the Muse, and that would be leading up to the final episode. Instead of there's a vacuum now. I believe.
What would you give this episode in terms of letters?
Oh boy. I was going to give it a B.
Really?
But now I'm kind of...
Go ahead. I don't care.
Well, I think I'll give it a C, because all of these problems that I brought up, well, I was unhappy about the therapist at the beginning. So I've worked with therapists. I had to work at a mental health clinic. I had to make appointments with, I had to type up all their, their case notes. And I know they can be goofy. And they're all, at least 2 out of 3 have probably passed away now because they died of old age. And, but I know they're goofy. And the other doctors, the other medical professionals think they're goofy too. And, you do have to wonder in their personal relationships, since they're so used to shrinking people, I even hate to say that, but how they keep that out of their relationships. But when she starts doing that, here he is. He saved that girl's life. They just had an intimate moment, so to speak, and she starts grilling him, and I didn't like that, and I didn't like the I didn't like Kingpin, and you see one thing that's very clear in this episode. That's probably the one clear thing. He really is totally full of himself, and he hates being mayor.
Well, in
it's
fact,
like he just despises it.
You forgot what I think is like one of the funniest quotes, which is one of his henchmen actually asks why he is mayor, or it might have been the guy who gets killed at the end of the episode. He's talking to Vanessa.
In this episode, he asked that.
Yeah, and he's like, "Why is Kingpin mayor? Why does he want to be mayor?" And she couldn't even answer.
No, that's
so
right.
I thought that was hilarious.
He didn't ask the guy. He didn't ask Kingpin. He asked this woman. The woman aide asked why.
There's got to be some secret motive for him being mayor. There's got to be something that they haven't revealed yet. Maybe. Because
I don't know.
For them to ask that on screen, it's either because this is something that I think is very complicated about the show, is that apparently the show was completely different, and then they brought these new guys in and they had to fix everything. And so there's a lot of stuff that's being mixed together, like a dirty painting where the paint gets mixed together and it just becomes like, what is this? Maybe that's like the new writers and people making the show who are like, hey, maybe we should figure out why he is mayor. Why is he the mayor? Why does he want to do this? Like, he hates it. It's like it's like torture for him. Like, and honestly, like, you know that whole thing where Kingpin had to hear that song being sung?
Yeah.
Like, that song now, if I hear that song, it like is drilled into my mind.
I think that's a 50s song.
And it really, really bothers me. And so it actually, the whole torture of him being mayor has rubbed off upon me to where I am like, just like, ugh. Like, I'm so glad that I'm not the mayor. Like Jesse Ventura, I've been a mayor. I've been a governor. What rank do I have to achieve?
Yeah, he really did say that too. I heard him too.
Yeah, Jesse Ventura said that in his conspiracy theory show because he was trying to investigate, I think, monkey people, and he was trying to get into this laboratory. They wouldn't let him in, and he's like, I've been a mayor. I've been a governor. What do I have to do to get into this place? The senator or the president? Well, I haven't lost an election yet.
Weird.
He really comes out with the funniest quotes. That would be really funny, wouldn't that, Safi? The Kingpin meets Jesse Ventura. Hello, Kingpin. I've been seeing a lot of news about you, and I've got news for you. You are a crooked guy. And then the Kingpin would just be like, I don't know what you're I can't.
Yeah, he's got his own special voice, but
I don't know what you're talking about, Jesse Ventura. You want to wrestle with me? You want to box?
And I really don't like how the Muse, the whole thing with the Muse was rushed. I think that could have been stretched out to the end of the show, the season. And the thing is, I think psychiatrists, now when I worked at this office, this was at the school, and it was part of the health clinic for the students. There was a section of it. But I would think a private psychiatrist would have better security measures, like a panic button or something in case one of her clients, the person's clients, did something, and because there is a danger of that. I remember growing up with somebody way back in grade school. Their father was a psychiatrist, and they talked about their security. I mean, that was a million years ago.
Well, even I have a secretary. When I was a kid, I had Barney the dinosaur, who was my secretary, and now I have Bernie the cat, and he is my secretary. So if anything happens, Bernie will attack you.
But I just don't like. That was a pretty interesting story that he had, and really they rushed through that.
They really rushed it.
And I knew at the Taekwondo thing, where he was expertly, like the last week, that fight scene between Daredevil and Muse was really good. And he was a real fighter, and he really had all this technique. And I'm like, God, no other serial killer in history has had that, kind of.
It was very equal.
Skill.
It was a very equal fight.
Yeah, it was.
Which was unexpected.
Yeah,
and so
very unexpected.
This fight was just basically Daredevil beating the shit out of the Muse, with the Muse going like, "I'm the Muse," and then he just couldn't do shit.
But he would know. I would think in fighting him, he would know that he was better than average, a lot better. But anyway, I didn't like that, and I think they could have, because I just don't know what else they're going to do.
Well, I think
I already brought this up, and I just don't know what's going to be the rest of the show.
The big problem with the show is that it's never really settled in. When you have a TV show, and because shows and movies are different, but when TV shows start off in a season, there's this, we're introducing everything, we're introducing the characters, the storylines, even the side characters, but there has to be a point at the beginning of the show where everything is settled in. And this show has not settled in.
Well,
there's not like a procedure, but there's not like a consistency to the show. It's just all over the place.
Well, is it fixed, a permanent thing that they're going to have a next season?
I told you, they're already filming next season.
Okay, so they are filming it, so this will be the next season will be a continuation.
But the people
they're going to drag the story into the next season.
But the people who make the next season, they are the new people completely. So there's none of this thing where they reshot everything. It's a complete vision from them. So it should be better.
I hope so.
Hopefully, yeah. The one cool thing, this is kind of a spoiler, but Daredevil is going to get a black suit, which I think is really cool. But that's another Spider-Man thing, isn't it? I think that they're very inspired off of Spider-Man. So it must be the new people who have the Spider-Man influence. But I would rate this episode a C-. I think that in general you could just say rushed and immaturely ended.
Okay, well, I don't think there's anything else to say. I'd be curious to see what other people thought and what they think they're going to do with the rest of it. Like, I've been watching Grimm. Of course, those were like procedural cases each week. Of course, they had these running storylines with the royal family, if anybody ever saw that show. But because they dispensed with that Muse story so quickly, I just don't see what they're going to end up with. It must be something with Vigilantes, Daredevil, and Kingpin going into the next season.
Yeah.
To me, how could it be any good?
Apparently Bullseye's coming back.
Oh.
Bullseye.
Nope, I don't remember
the
that.
guy who got put in prison at the beginning of the season for killing Foggy and all those people.
Oh, that guy.
He's coming back somehow. I guess maybe he'll escape from prison, or I don't know what'll happen with that.
They'll probably have that, and then they'll end the season with a cliffhanger and Bullseye. Betcha.
Yeah, they will end it with a cliffhanger, probably. Yeah.
So that's it. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and become one of our almost 700 subscribers. And if you have any good comments, like I said, about what you thought about what happened in the show, let us know. So goodbye, everybody.
Bye.